Welcome to the show. I'm Nick Kalikas alongside Miguel Odorade.
Yep, on today's show, we're going to look at the UFC's big announcement where on November 12th, they debut on Fox Sports.
And on our Oddsbreaker segment, I'll be joined by Jason Navarra from MiddleEasy.com and Damon Martin from MMAweekly.com.
Yep, Jason and Damon are both going to get a first crack at 4 big fights that Nick's going to break that are not at the sports books yet.
That's right. As you can tell by the graphic on the screen we're going to pop up right now, the 4 fights I've selected should cause a decent stir and a buzz from the public for sure.
The UFC and Dana White recently announced a huge deal with Fox Sports. They're going to debut on November 12th with 3 fights on network television. Nick, what do you think?
What else can you say? Hats off to Dana White and Zuffa. I think they've been waiting a long time for the right television deal to come along, and it looks like they found it. And Fox is the network channel. And this is exciting. This is huge for the sport in general. I think for the media, for the fighters, just every aspect of the sport is going to definitely benefit.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue with the way Zuffa does business. They've elevated the sport from the very beginning, and what I like is that, they've done a lot of landmark things, getting approved by boxing commissions, getting on Spike TV, creating a reality show, and Dana thinks this is, far and away much bigger than any of those things or all of those things combined. So it can only be great for the sport.
Yeah, I think so. And like I said, I'm happy for the sports books as well because I'm sure that we're going to see a lot more action coming in on those Fox televised cards at the book. So it's going to, in general, just the popularity of the sport, the betting, everything with it is going to increase. Now, there's also a void to fill on Spike TV, and we're hearing rumors, even though they have a contract with MTV2, that Bellator might be a candidate to fill that void in Spike TV. So what we might see is a number 2 legit contender stepping up and get right behind the UFC. So this might open the door for somebody else.
We saw the Bellator executives deny that, but MTV2 and Spike TV are part of the same network, part of the same group of ownership or conglomerate or whatever you want to call it. So it's a distinct possibility.
Yeah, Bellator's been putting on some exciting shows, so I would like to see him cross over to Spike TV and fill that void. I think it would be great for MMA in general as well. I'm sure that Zuffa doesn't necessarily agree with that, but I think it would be great for the sport. So good stuff to Dana White and Zuffa, and looking forward to seeing MMA on Fox.
Yep, MMA on Fox. It's something we would never have dreamed of 10 years ago, no?
Not at all. I mean, this is the right step, the right direction the sport is heading in, definitely. Our first guest today on the Oddsbreaker segment is Jason Navarra from MiddleEasy.com. Jason, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys.
And joining us also from MMAweekly.com is Damon Martin. Damon, thanks for coming back on Oddsbreaker.
Thanks as always for having me.
Both of you guys know how the show works, but for those that don't, BetDSI.com, our sponsored sportbook, has donated $5,000 bankroll to both Damon and Jason, and they each get to bet $500 a pop on either the favorite or the underdog. I've selected 4 fights, and we're going to start off with Jason first. So Jason, you get first crack at these odds before they hit the sportsbook here. Fight number 1 is from UFC 136, Melvin Guillard versus Joe Loazin. Now, Melvin's going to enter the favorite, minus 275. Comeback's going to be plus 215 on Loazin. Give me your bet and give me your take on that fight.
I'm going with Lozon. I really am not on the Melvin Guillard bandwagon quite yet. He is the owner of a 5-fight winning streak. But I think that Lozon matches up well on the feet. I think it can end on the feet. I think it can end on the ground. I think it's a lot closer fight than people are giving Joe credit for. Also, I think it's so close that these outside influences might affect it, and Joe Lozon is a huge nerd. He's officially switched from Call of Duty to Battlefield, so I think that's going to give him the strength to beat Guillard.
All right, so you're going to go $500 to win $1,075 on the underdog, Loazin. And we'll throw it over to you, Damon Martin. What do you think? Do you agree or disagree with Jason's bet?
I got to disagree, and I am definitely on the Melvin Guillard bandwagon. I think Melvin is the most dynamic striker at 155 pounds. Phenomenal with his hands, phenomenal with his kicks, his knees. His wrestling is completely underrated, and I think this fight could look a lot like his fight with Evan Dunham, with Lozon scrambling for takedowns and catching a knee to the face or a knee to the belly for his troubles. Listen, Lozon is definitely a tough guy, and I think he's got a chance in this fight because I do believe people are underrating him a little bit. But Melvin Guillard is on top top of his game. His confidence is through the roof. And Lozon, unfortunately, has been inconsistent in some big fights. Just like the fight with George Sotoropoulos, he kind of comes out of the gate fast and then fades a little bit. And I think Gillard's going to take advantage of that. And I could see this fight ending in the first round with a Melvin Gillard knockout.
All right, so you guys are actually splitting. And Damon Martin, you're going with the favorite, Gillard minus 275, 1375 to win $500. Now, both of you guys are splitting, which tells me that we might draw two-way action on this line when it does hit the sports books. All right, for our second fight in the Oddsbreaker segment, we're going to throw it over to Damon Martin. We're going to open up the line for Jeremy Stephens versus Anthony Pettis, another big fight on UFC 136. The opening line is going to be Anthony Pettis minus 260. Comeback is going to be plus 210 on Jeremy Stephens. Damon, give me your bet and give me your thoughts on that fight.
Well, I'm going to go with Anthony Pettis, and I understand, the dog money's going to come in on Jeremy Stephens because he's an extremely hard puncher and, really did show off some better well-rounded skills in his last fight against Danny Downs. But I just believe Anthony Pettis is a better fighter. I think he's a better all-around striker, a little bit more diversity in his striking style than what Jeremy Stephens has. And on the ground, I think he's a little underrated. I mean, I don't think Jeremy Stephens' wrestling is, nearly the level of a Clay Guida. And, I think that, Anthony can stay off his back in this fight if Jeremy does decide to take it to the ground. If it stays on its feet, I just think Anthony's the more diverse, more elaborate striker, and I just think he can, outpoint Jeremy Stephens. I don't see him finishing Jeremy Stephens, but I definitely see him outpointing Jeremy Stephens in this fight.
All right, so Damon's going to go 1,300 to win 500, laying the juice minus 260 on Anthony Pettis. Let's throw it over to you, Jason. Do you agree or disagree with Damon?
I actually agree. I'm also taking Pettis, but I don't think it's going to be via points. This is one of those fights that usually you see two dynamic strikers and you think that they're going to stand there and throw, but normally when that happens, I can see it becoming a grappling match as well, and I think Pettis has the edge in that case. Or it can end in a way, maybe Stephens lands a bomb, Pettis throws on a triangle from the bottom. He is a great submission guy. He's very, very underrated submissions. I do think Pettis has the edge in just about every area, but I do think, that Pettis is going to finish it probably in the second round, probably by triangle.
All right, so Jason's also taking 1,300 to win 500 on Anthony Pettis. And honestly, guys, I'm really glad that I opened it around 2.5 to 1 or a little bit higher when it does hit the sports books. Jeremy Stephens does earn my respect, so he is coming in at a decent price, but just lately, the public hype in general over Anthony Pettis. I mean, he is well-rounded, and you guys made some very valid points why you guys are taking Pettis, so I'm glad I opened it that high. Moving right along to our third fight, let's throw it over to Jason. We're going to go to UFC 139, and on that card, we're going to open up Uriah Faber versus Brian Bowles, two of my favorite 135-pound fighters. And Jason, the line is going to be minus 205 for Faber, plus 165 for Brian Bowles. So basically, Faber 2 to 1. Give me your thoughts and give me your bet.
If this fight happens even a year ago, I'm taking Bowles, but Faber has really, really, really impressed me at 135. I think he's looked better than I ever thought he would. And I think he really wants to fight Cruz at least one more time. And I have to assume that the winner of this will fight the winner of Cruz Mighty Mouse. So, bottom line, I personally think that this should be 5 rounds. It's going to be a really fun fight, but I think Faber has a lot more experience, 2-3 times the amount of experience as Bowles. And I think he will take advantage of that, and I think he's going to win it handily, probably by decision.
All right, so Jason's betting 1,025 to win 500 on Uriah Faber. And let's throw it over to you, Damon. Do you agree or disagree with Jason?
I disagree slightly, and what I mean by that is, listen, we're talking about the underdog bet here. I think Brian Bowles is a very solid underdog and a guy worth throwing some money on. When it comes down to the fight, I really do think this is a toss-up. I mean, Uriah Faber has looked, really solid at bantamweight. His last fight against Cruz, he really showed some well-rounded skills, some good power on his feet. I think with this fight with Brian Bowles, it could look a lot like the Eddie Wineland fight. I don't think he wants to play around on his feet too much with a guy like Brian Bowles, who really has some serious power in his hands. But I think Brian Bowles' wrestling is underrated. His submission game is solid. So I'm going to go with Brian Bowles, but I really feel like this is a toss-up. But with that kind of underdog money on Brian Bowles, you got to throw some money down on him.
All right, so Damon is going to go 500 to win 825. So you guys are splitting. Jason went with Uriah, and you're going with a dog and Bowles. And this line was probably one of the more difficult lines I've set in a while, opening Uriah 2 to 1. So we're going to see how this plays out at the sportsbooks as well. All right, our final fight on the Oddsbreaker segment, we're going to stick to UFC 139, and we're going to start with you first, Damon. I'm going to break the line for Rick Story versus Martin Kampmann. Rick Story is going to come in as a slight favorite at minus 140. The comeback's going to be plus 110 on Martin Kampmann. Damon, give me your thoughts and give me your bet.
I'm going to go with Rick Story in this fight for a couple reasons. I think Rick Story is a much better fighter than what we saw in his last fight against Charlie Brenneman. You know, that was a switch of opponents last minute, and it wasn't like he got blown out. He just lost a tough decision. I think Rick Story is a much better fighter than that. I think he's going to come out, use his wrestling in this fight, you know, take Martin Kampmann down, maybe make it look a little bit like the Jake Shields fight where, you know, Jake was able to take him down and kind of control him on the mat. And I think this fight, honestly, is going to look a lot like Rick Story's fight with Thiago Alves, where he just kind of grinds him against the cage, gets a takedown, and just, you know, kind of beats him up on the ground. So I got to favor Rick Story. Martin Kampmann's a phenomenal fighter, but I got to give a slight edge to Rick Story in this one.
Okay, so Damon's going to lay the juice at minus 140, 700 to win 500. Jason, let's get your take on this fight. Do you like the dog in Kampmann, or do you like the favorite in Rick Story?
I'm taking Kampmann, even though I don't disagree with Damon. This is another one of those toss-up fights. It's going to be very, very close, but I'm going to have to give the edge on Kampmann purely out of desperation. He's lost 2 in a row, and those may have been really questionable decisions, but I can't imagine a scenario of seeing him losing 3 in a row. His back is up against the wall. I don't know if he'll get cut if he loses, but I think that he's going to come out there. He's got a really well-rounded game. I think that even if he does get taken down, he can make things happen either with sweeps or scrambles, and I think that he can definitely control it on the feet. So yeah, I am taking Kampmann. It is going to be very close, and I think what Damon said could absolutely play out, but I really am giving the edge to Kampmann, purely out of desperation.
All right, so you're taking plus 110, 500 to win 550, and you guys are splitting once again on this fight, and both you guys made valid arguments as well. I think it's going to be one heck of a welterweight tilt, and I'm really looking forward to this one as well. Great job, guys. We picked 4 difficult fights, and you guys did a fantastic job breaking each of them down. You guys actually split on 3 out of 4 fights, which is good because I'm thinking we're going to get two-way action at the sportsbooks on those fights. Let's start off with you, Jason. Before we let you go, anything you'd like to say?
Oh, just follow MiddleEasy.com on Twitter. Check out MiddleEasy.com for your daily news. Thank you.
All right. Damon, what about you? Any shout-outs you want to say before we let you go here?
Yeah, you know, definitely check out MMAweekly.com. Obviously, it's still continuing to update, and make sure to follow us this week with, you know, everything going on UFC in Brazil, the Strikeforce Heavyweight Grand Prix coming up. And follow me on Twitter at Damon Martin. Always try to post things interesting on there as well.
All right, guys, 2 of the best in the business. Thanks for coming on Oddsbreaker.
Welcome back after another hot Oddsbreaker segment. Our 2 guests, Jason Navarro and Damon Martin, split on a bunch of these fights, Nick. Why don't you explain to these people how the adjustment segment here works?
Just when a line initially hits a sports book, there's going to be some movement when a max bet comes in. So this is what we're going to do here based on Jason and Damon's bets. The first fight was Joe Loazin versus Melvin Guillard. My opener was minus 275 for Melvin. Comeback was plus 215. Now we had Jason Navarro from Middle Easy come in and take the dog in Joe Loazin, and Melvin Guillard was taken by Damon Martin. So the guy split on this fight. I'm not going to adjust this line. I'm going to leave it where it is. I think it's going to probably draw two-way action. Both the guys are well-known, well-respected, talented fighters, and so no adjustment in this fight. Give me your thoughts.
I think it's a terrific fight. I think it's just an awesome fight because both guys are extremely experienced. Both guys bring completely different skills to the fight, and I think it's a thrilling fight. I got to be honest with you, if I had to take a pick, I'm going to pick Melvin Guillard. I'm not a big Melvin fan, just because I've known about him for a long time, and I think, you know, he's come a long way. He really has come a long way. I'm still waiting for him to crack mentally, and I may be wrong. I don't know if this is the right fight for to pick against him, just because Joe, I think, is going to be a little bit physically limited against him.
All right. Valid points there as well. Let's move on to the next one. Fight number 2 was a battle between Jeremy Stephens and Anthony Pettis. Now, both of the guys came in and laid the minus 260 on Anthony Pettis, so I'm going to have to adjust this line a little bit higher. I think the hype behind Pettis is amazing. We've seen that in his last fight with Clay Guida. He opened as a slight favorite, minus 130. The line went almost up to minus 300 when it settled. So this line, I opened it higher than I think I should open it, and they both still came in on Anthony Pettis. So the new line's going to be minus 285, plus 225 when it does hit the sports books. Give me your thoughts on this one.
I would pick Anthony Pettis in this fight in particular. I like Jeremy Stephens. I think he's a tough kid. Anthony Pettis has a little bit of pressure on him, I think. I think that you know, how long are we going to talk about that wonderful kick he did? You know, is he going to show me something else? He's lost a fight since then and blah, blah, blah. So I need to see more from him, and I think he's going to have to fight under pressure. I think he's capable of doing that. I think he's a talented kid, and I think he'll probably win this fight.
All right, fair enough. And let's move on to the third fight. It was a battle between Brian Bowles and Uriah Faber, two great fighters at 135 pounds. And once again, we had the guys split. We had Jason come in and take Uriah Faber, and Damon came in and took the dog and Bowles. I'm going to leave this fight alone again because I think 2-1 Uriah Faber's probably, again, a competitive line, a decent line that's going to draw two-way initial action at the book, so we're going to leave it alone. No adjustment made. Give me your thoughts.
It's another great fight, I may catch some criticism for this, but I'm of the opinion that we've seen already the best of Uriah Faber, that he's a guy who counted down his speed early in his career, and speed's the first thing you lose. And since he's dropped off just a pinch in speed, similar to, you know, has happened to other fighters such as Ruben Asado or someone like this, he started to lose fights. And, you know, he's on a little bit of a roll, losing streak kind of thing. And I think Bowles is the right kind of guy to take him out.
Moving on to the next fight was another interesting fight, this time at welterweight, between Rick Story and Martin Kampmann. I opened Rick Story the slight favorite at -140, comeback +110 on Martin Kampmann. We had Jason come in on Martin Kampmann, and Damon laid the juice on Rick Story. I'm not going to touch this line either. I think it's a competitive fight, and Rick Story deserves to be the slight favorite, so I figured the line's pretty good. What are your thoughts on this one?
Another very even fight, great fights this time. I'm going to go with Martin Kampmann on this one. I think he's under a little bit of pressure to keep his contract. I think he's lost a couple of fights in a row. I am not 100% sold on Rick Story. He's had some good performances. He's a tough kid, a good fighter, but I do want to see more, and I'd like to see him pull out this fight to impress me. But I think Kampmann's a little more complete.
All right, there you have it. So out of the 4 fights, the guy split out of 3 out of 4 fights. The only fight that we are going to adjust is the Anthony Pettis fight. He goes from 260 to -285. And these lines will hit the sportsbook soon, so check them out.
This is the part of the show where we dip into our viewer mailbag. If you have any questions about MMA or any of the odds that we're breaking for Nick or I here, go ahead and send us an email at mmaoddsbreaker@gmail.com. If we select your question and it's read on the show, we will mail you a t-shirt if you include your street address. Nick, talk about the question this week.
This question comes from Indianapolis, Indiana, and Keith asks what our thoughts were of the Chris Lytle retirement. So give me your thoughts first.
You know, Chris is a class act. I've known him a long time. He started in the late 90s. When he was young, he went to Japan, learned a nice submission game. I don't think we saw a lot of that in the UFC, but he had he was a great ground fighter. Not a great wrestler, but a great ground fighter. He supplemented that with a lot of boxing afterwards, and I think that's what we saw. What I like when a guy goes out on top like this. And Chris, more power to you. Enjoy your family. You deserve it. Everything you've earned, you know, you deserve. Go out there and do that. What I don't want to see is I don't want to see fighters just keep coming back for paydays and, you know, just drag their careers out. I think he went out on top.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm glad that he went out on top, like you said, because we see it far too many times that fighters stick around too long and kind of damage their legacy. But with Chris, I am going to miss him. I mean, he's one of the fighters that brought it every time he stepped into the octagon, the cage. You knew it was going to be an exciting fight. That's why he led the all-time UFC salary bonuses, like as far as the fight of the night, bonuses, knockout of the night, submission of the night. He's a leader all-time in those awards, so deservingly so. So he made a little bit extra bank, I mean, recently too, which, again, deservingly so.
Hey, that's why you can retire, right?
Definitely.
But you got to take advantage of stuff like that. And I remember back in the old hook and shoot days and stuff, he was a standout, always there. You could always count on a great fight from Chris Lytle. I bet you he could still keep coming back and still give us great fights. But what I enjoyed seeing was that he's a class act, and that he said, you know, the only thing better than, you know, his career and his UFC time is his family, and he wants to spend time with them. Don't forget that, Chris. Just enjoy it.
Yeah, class act, and we hope you enjoy your time off in retirement. Before we sneak out of here, if you're a professional gambler that bets anywhere between $500 to $5,000 a pop and wants first crack at my odds, send us an email, mmaoddsbreaker@gmail.com, and you could be a guest on the show.
That's it for this episode of MMA Oddsbreaker. You can look for these odds that we broke, the 4 big fights, on August 24th, Wednesday, or the 25th, Thursday, at the sportsbooks. And we also want to give a big thanks to our 2 guests, Jason Navarre and Damon Martin.
Make sure you keep checking at MMA Oddsbreaker on Twitter for all the latest show updates. Until next time, for Miguel Oderade, I'm Nick Kalikas saying enjoy the fights.